Arvind, I request you to
Yes.
invite Dr. Krishnamurthy.
Our final talk for today's symposium is from Dr. Shrikaanth Krishnamurthy, who is a psychiatrist from Bengaluru, India, living in England. A trained vocalist and composer in Karnataka Sangeeta, he also writes in several languages: Sanketi, Kannada, Tamil, English, Sanskrit, to name some. He's the first Vagyayakara to create musical compositions in the Sanketi language. He also writes verses in English set to classic Indian meters, Chandas. His haiku, tanka, haibun, and haiga have been published in reputed international journals and anthologies and won prizes. He has translated many works between languages. Notable are the translations of the magnum opus Mankuthimana Kagga into Sanketi in the same meter, Sumati Shataka from Telugu to Kannada, the renowned Kannada novel Vamshavriksha to Sanketi, and classical Tamil poetry to other languages. He'll be speaking today on Verslation, meters, and music. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Arvind, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's been lovely to listen to some of the talks. Unfortunately, due to the time difference, I missed the first few. Okay, without much further ado, let me get into what I would like to talk about. So yeah, today I would like to talk about verslation, as Arvind has kindly introduced. So what is verslation? Now, verslation is basically a portmanteau term from verse translation. This is a term I coined about 4 years ago. I think in 2 weeks, it'll be exactly 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's basically a padyanuvada. So where you translate the verse in the original language to a recipient language, preferably in the same meter, but not necessarily so. Here, I think one has to remember that there will be several challenges. So although this is meant to be a lecture, mine will be a demonstration than a lecture. So let me start with a verslation, one verse, and I'll talk about it in a bit. So it's in English. Vani plays melodies about Pashupati's valor upon Kachapi. Soon as you, Lalita, utter an accolade, nodding the head in assent, she lays it to the side beneath a covering. There goes quietly the lute. What string can deliver ever the melody, sweet as your voice, mother? So you might have noticed that this is actually in the Shardula Vikridita meter, but set to the English language. I'll just read it for the Chandas to actually come out better. Vani plays melodies about Pashupati's valor upon Kachapi. Soon as you, Lalita, utter an accolade, nodding the head in assent, she lays it to the side. Beneath the covering, there goes quietly the lute. What string can deliver ever the melody, sweet as your voice, mother? As I think a few of you would have definitely understood, this is a verslation of a lovely verse from the Saundarya Lahari. Vipanchya gayanti vividhamapadanam pashupate Tvayarabdhe vaktum charita shirasa sadhu vachane tadiyair madhuryair apalapita tantri kalaravam nijam veenam vani nichulayati chole nanibhritam. So this is actually in a different meter from the original. But I will also quote another verslation of mine from the same Saundarya Lahari, which I have done in 2 meters in English. One is in the original, which is Shikarini. The other one is in the Shardula Vikridita. So I'll tell the Shikarini verse first. A half-bloomed blue lotus, very benevolent, is the very eye. Shive, sprinkle me too. A revivifying look, liberally. To you it's no loss, but to the pitiable, me propitious. The moonbeams fall equal to the megacity and to a desert. The one Shardula Vikridita goes this way. May thine eye, brilliant, akin to the pretty, half-blossoming blue lily, Fall on me very far away, pitiable, for 1 second too many. This will prove very sure to me propitious, and cost to you not at all. Does moon discriminate between a residence or chaparral, O Shive? And I'm sure you know the original verses. Drisha draghi yasya daradalita nilot palarucha dabiyamsam deenam snapaya kripaya mamapi Shive anenayam dhanyo bhavati nachate haniriyata vaneva harmyeva samakara nipato himakaraha. So I would now like to actually share with you a verse from the Mankutimana Kagga, which I have actually verslated into several languages, just to show how it can sound. So yeah, the original is Ilayinda molake ogevandu tamategalilla, ಫಲಮಾಗುವಂದು ತುತ್ತೂರಿದನಿಯಿಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಳಕೀವ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಚಂದ್ರರದೊಂದು ಸದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೊಲಿ ನಿನ್ನ ತುಟಿಗಳನ್ನು ಮಂಕುತಿಮ್ಮ. So first I will say in Sanketi, ಇಳೆಯಣ್ಣು ಮೊಳಕ ಓಂದಿರ ತಮಟೆಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲ, ಪಳುಮಾಗರಂಡೆ ಕೊಂಬೆಯು ಊದಿತಿಲ್ಲ, ಒಳಿಕುಡರ ರವಿಶಶಿಹ ಪಣ್ಣಿನಾರ್ ಭಟಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ದಳ ತುಟಿಗಳುಂದೇತ ಮಂಕುತಿಮ್ಮ. Next I would like to say it in Tamil. தளிரெழும் பொழுதிலோர் தம்பட்ட ஒலி இல்லை, அழிபழுத்திட நமரி அரவித்துமில்லை, ஒளிருமதி சூரியரின் ஓசை கேட்டாரில்லை, தலைவுன் இதழ்களை తడిరాయనే. నెక్స్ట్ ఇన్ తెలుగు. పుట్టినప్పుడు చిగురు బొబ్బరించుట లేదు, చెట్టు పండిన వేళ షెహనాయి లేదు, బట్టు పొగడుట వెలయు భానుశశులకు లేదు, కుట్టుని పెదవులను గోలగురుడ. And so these are all in the original Panchamatra Chaupadi meter. But here what we have to remember is that when verslating, yes, it's preferable to use the meter in the original, but sometimes you will have to change it to suit the language, the recipient language. And this is why in Hindi I have used the Doha meter for the same verse. Pallav dharti se uga parna baje dhol, phalpa ke parna suni shahnayi ki bol, भाए सूरज चांद भी कुछ ना किए धमाल, सीख तनिक अपने होंठ सीने को मंदलाल. So again, this is in a different verse, and just to show that the Panchamatra Chaupadi can be used in Sanskrit as well. Another Mankutima Kagga verse. Janakajaya darushanadin aitu ravana chapala, kanakamruga darushanade janakiya chapala, janavavana nindipudu kanikaripuda akeyali, manada bage ariyadadu mankutima. This in Sanskrit I have done it this way. Janakaja darshanat chapala saravanaha, kanakamruga darshanat janaki chapala, tam janam nindatitu tam dayam dharayati, namano gatim vetti balamitra. So here, next what I would like to demonstrate is actually, I think this is a verse from Vijika. Let me read the original. So I've got it here. So yeah, the original verse is actually Vilasa masrunol lasan musala lola do kandali paraspara pariskhalad valaya niswanod bandhura lasanti kalahunkriti prasabha kampitora stala trutad gamaka sankula kalama kandani geetaya. So this one I have verslated in this manner. Let me get this. Okay, this is in Sanketiya. So chalak chulakanella nallonaka chachiro chullira. I'm just trying to read this correctly. Yeah. Chalak chulakanella nallonaka chachiro chullira, phalak jala kalandulinja vada ಕೈಲಳಾಹಾಯಿರ ಡುಲಕ್ ಬೊಳಕನಾಡರ ಮುಲೆಹಡುಳ್ ತಡಂಜೋಂದಿರ ಕುಲುಕ್ ಕುಲುಕಿ ಸೂವುಸು ನುಸುಳಿ ಕೋಟಪಾಟಕ್ಕರ. So this is how it is. So I think one thing we have to remember again, when we are translating between languages, we have to understand the nuances of both the languages, understand the nuance of the original poem, and also respect the beauty and the rules and regulations of each language. I think what we call as Bhasha Maryada which covers a lot. So it is very important to try and actually keep a finger on the pulse. Again, as a doctor, I have to talk about pulses. Sorry about that. So you keep a finger on the pulse of both the languages and try and ensure that you do not actually restrict either of them in either flow or in terms of quality. So it has to be essentially lossless, both in quality and quantity. So neither damage nor loss has to occur in so much as is possible. I think it's subject to the restrictions of oneself mostly rather than the language. So for example, in Kannada, we have a rule that the lagam, so a lagu followed by a guru should not occur at the beginning of any gana or at the beginning of any verse unless it's actually dictated by the Chandas itself. So, but if you look at this, the lagam rule is not necessarily applicable to another language. For example, in Tamil, there is no such restriction. And likewise, when I verslated into Sanketi, I have not found the need to restrict the lagam simply because the lagam usage in words is quite common. There's a lot of words in Sanketi which will start with the lagam itself. So here is one verse to demonstrate, again from the Mankutimana. So the original is Naran Ondu Vyavahara Yaradaya Vayalakha Horagananu Bhoga Kondu Volaniti Gondu Varamana Deha Kadode Manasakadenu Parikisa Lekkavanu Mankutima Ore Karyattayu Veyu Lekku Rende Iparatte Bukti Te Dulniti Tede Narandadayu Maikache Manasikode Parikshipi Lekhatta Mankutima. So let me read it again just to give the idea of the Chandas. Ore Karyattaya Vayu Lekku Rende Iparatte Bukti Te Dulniti Tede Narandadayu Maikache Manasikode Parikshipi Lekhatta Mankutima. So this is how it runs in the Verslation. So, and again, another thing we have to remember when I was talking about remembering the rules and regulations is it's important to keep the rules. For example, in Telugu and Tamil, we have what is called as Vadi or Mone. So that means it's a Keshara as well. But in the Keshara, you also have what is called as the Akshara Maitri. So it has to come there. So it's important to do that. So when you're translating, in as much as possible, try and keep the rules. Sometimes you may add rules. It's better not to subtract what is expected in a particular language, because if it doesn't follow the basic rules that's actually used, then it'll quite fall flat. So that's really important. So here, I have done the reverse. For example, from Telugu, this is from Sumati Shataka. No, actually, this is from Vemana. So in Vemana's Padyas, you don't have the prasa, but you only have the yati pattern. And I have kept that in Kannada as well. So instead of having Adi Prasa or Dvitiya Akshara Prasa, I have used the Vadi here. So the original goes like Kanaga Sommu Lenno Kanakamba Dokkati Pasula Vanne. I'm just trying to read from Telugu, that's why I'm a bit slow. Pasula Vanne Lenno Palokataye Palokatiye Pushpa Jatulenno Puja Yokkate Sumi Vishwadabhirama Minura Vema. So in Kannada, I have made this as Karna Lodave Yesto Kanaka Vembudu Vande Hasuva Banna Halavu Halondene Pushpa Jati Yesto Pujaya Dondene Kshitijat Madbhirama Kela Vema. There is a nuance here which I would like to point out. Here, although the Gana pattern is exactly the same in Kannada and Telugu, the way the Ganas are actually reckoned are slightly different, slightly but significantly, because there are certain restrictions in how the Ganas have to be reckoned in Telugu, or how they have to be actually written out. But in Kannada, we do not have that restriction, and therefore, again, I have retained the way it is in Kannada, because that is how it is. So again, I've tried to keep the best of both the donor and the recipient language here. So yeah, that's one. So the next one is, it's a doha in Kannada. So yeah, let me read the Kabir doha first. Kabir te nar andh hai, guru ko kehte aur, hari roothe guru thor hai, guru roothe nahi thor. So here in the verslation in Kannada, let me read it first. ಗುರುವನು ತೆಗಳುವವನು ಕುರುಡ, ಕೊಳ್ಳು ಕಬೀರನ ಸೊಲ್ಲ, ಗುರುವೆ ಶರಣು ಹರಿ ಮುನಿದಾಗ, ಗುರು ಮುನಿದರೆ ಶರಣಿಲ್ಲ. So here, of course, I have kept the Doha meter, but I have additionally added the Dvitiyakshara Prasa and also the Vadi or the Mohni. Yeah. So that is because, Kannada being a Dravida language, it's very important to, again, have what is important in Kannada, but also not lose the Antya Prasa and the general pattern of the Doha meter. So I have tried to retain both. So another Kabir Doha, I'll just mention it. There's nothing to explain here. ಮಾತಲಿ ಬೈಗಳು ಬಳಸುತ್ತಿರೆ ಬನ್ನ ಜಗಳ ಬರಿಹಾಳು, ಸೋತು ತೆರಳಿದವನೇ ಸಾಧು, ತೊಡಗಿ ಬೆಳೆಸಿದವ ಕೀಳು. So the original is गारी ही सो उपजय, कलह कष्ट और नीच, हारी चले सो संत है, लागी मरई so नीच. So the next verse, it's a very famed verse from Gaha Satasai. So I'm sure a lot of you will recognize that. The original, this is about the hunter and the huntress. Yeah, the one who is pining away. Ajjakai movi viyaho vahavahu ruva jovanumatta sohaggam dhanu rumpach chalena rachanka vikkirai. So this is the original. In fact, I'll tell a little bit about the verse in a bit. So the verslation into Sanketi here is Vedati Sobagatattina Kudito Dinanityu Kanna Kukkane Vedanu Attatinaye Kudara Villa Herayane Onane. So it's about how the hunter is pining away, but it's actually expressed without saying that he's pining away, saying that he actually keeps on shaving away the bow, which in effect is to say that he could no longer wield the bow as it was because of his weakening. This is where I would call it as a haiku movement. So in haiku, you don't say, you just show. So this is a very beautiful verse, which no doubt you will all already know about. But the fact that the pining away is shown without ever saying the man is pining away for the woman is the beauty of it. And that's exactly what we see in haiku. And this is the cross-cultural parallels we see, which may be coincidental, but evidently very beautiful when you actually chance upon it. Right. I'll give an example of a verslation from Sangam poetry. This is from Aindina Elubadu. So I will talk a little bit more about about what I have tried to do here. So let me read the verslation first. Mala tolacha baga vanamangu ghamugutta talamalipiyanaliha tanga jumugutta palayavottadenna palandi mutta kaluvane nashruvul kai. So you can see Mala tolacha baga vanamangu ghamugutta. So it's kind of Panchamatra Chopadi, but with a truncated end on each line. The last line is obviously much shorter. So I'll read the original now. Karpodai Pandil Kamala Puravellam Arpod Idavande Imirndada Neer Tindri Ondradalaikum Sirumale Marvurande Nindraga Nindradini. Right? So here the original actually is in the Venva meter. So what I have done here is that the verslation, the verse in Sanketi actually respects both the Panchamatra pattern as also the Venba pattern. So you can actually scan it in two different ways. Therefore, it's kind of respecting, it's a nod to the original, not just in terms of meaning, but also in the meter. But it certainly also takes into account the way the Sanketi language flows and actually puts it into the Panchamatra pattern. And so you also try to retain Shabdalankaras. For example, Antadi. There are, the Tiruvandadi, the Arvas Tiruvandadi is a very beautiful set of 100 verses where the last word repeats itself as the first word of the next verse. I will just give two verses. This is a verslation into Kannada. So here I'll read the verslation and then the original. Tanu bhuvi bettavale taadisuva kadalelaru ಬಾನು ನುಂಗಿದುದು ನಿಜ ವಾತವೆಂಬರು ಮಾನವಿಲ್ಲದ ಗುಣದ ಮಾಗಡಲೆ ಅಂದಿಳೆಯ ಮಾನದಷ್ಟಿದ್ದಿತೋ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಾಯಿ. Okay. ತಾನು ಭುವಿ ಬೆಟ್ಟವಲೇ ತಾಡಿಸುವ ಕಡಲೆಲರು ಬಾನು ನುಂಗಿದುದು ನಿಜವಾತೆಂಬರು. ಮಾನವಿಲ್ಲದ ಗುಣದ ಮಾಗಡಲೆ ಅಂದಿಳೆಯೇ ಮಾನವು ಇಲ್ಲದ ಗುಣದ ಮಾಗಡಲೆ ಅಂದು ಇಳೆಯ ಮಾನದಷ್ಟು ಇದ್ದಿತೋ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಾಯಿ. தி ஒரிஜினல் இஸ் மண்ணும் மலையும் மறிகடலும் மாருதமும் வெண்ணும் விழுங்கியது மெய்யன்பர் எண்ணில் அலகளவு கண்ட சீராழியாய்க்கு அன்று உலகளவும் உண்டோ உன்வாய். Is your mouth as big enough to fit all the whole world is the gist of it. The next verse, so the original finished with vai in Tamil, and in Kannada I finished with bai. So the next verse starts with bai itself. ಯವನಲ್ಲದೆ ಯವನಲ್ಲದೆ ಪರಸದೈ ಕೈಯಿಳೆಯ. Sorry, my throat isn't actually cooperative, so let me just recite it. ಬಾಯವನನಲ್ಲದೆ ಪರಸದೈ ಕೈ ಇಳೆಯ ತಾಯವನನಲ್ಲದೆ ತಾವು ಮುಗಿಯವೈ ಸಾಯಸುರಿ ಮೊಲೆ ನಂಜ ಸವಿದವನ ಮೈ ಹೆಸರನೇ ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಕಂಡು ಕೇಳದು ಕಣ್ಗಿವಿ. வாய் அவனை அல்லது வாழ்த்தாது கையுலகம் தாயவனை அல்லது தாம் தொழா பேய்முலை நஞ்சு ஊனாக உண்டான் உருவொடு பேரல்லால் காணாக்கண் கேளா செவி. So my eyes and ears do not see or hear anything other than the mother of the whole world, that is Vasudeva Krishna is the gist of it, and there is some description of what he does here. So yeah, I have retained the Antadi pattern, and also similarly this is a verse from Tirupavai, which again is in Kannada. The meter is different, but I have retained some Shabdalankaras where there is a pun in the original, and I have actually sort of brought it into the Verslation as well. So this is actually a conversation between Andal and her friends. They are calling her saying, "You're being very lazy. Why are you still lying down when the whole world has woken up?" So you will all know the original. At least some of you will definitely be aware of it. எல்லே இளங்கிளியே இன்னம் உறங்குதியோ சில்லன் ரழையேன் மின் நங்கை மீர் போதர்கின்றேன் வல்லையுன் கட்டுரைகள் பண்டே உன் வாயறிதும் வல்லீர்கள் நீங்களே நானேதான் ஆயிடுக ஒல்லை நீ போதா உனக்கென்ன வேறுடையை எல்லாரும் போந்தார் போந்தெண்ணிக்கொள் வல்லானை கொன்றானை மாற்றாரை மாற்றழிக்க வல்லானை மாயனை பாடலோர் எம்பாவாய். So வல்லானை, that's the pun here. So that's the Yamaka and Shlesha as well here. So in the Verslation in Kannada it is this way. ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಎಳಗಿಳಿಯೇ ಇನ್ನೂ ಮಲಗಿಹೆಯೋ ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಎಳಗಿಳಿಯೇ ಇನ್ನೂ ಮಲಗಿಹೆಯೋ ಗುಲ್ಲು ಮಾಡದಿರಿಗೋ ಬರುವೆ ಗುಲ್ಲು ಮಾಡದಿರಿಗೋ ಬರುವೆ ಬಲ್ಲೆ ನಿನ್ನ ಹುಸಿ ಬಾಯ ಬರಬ ಬಲ್ಲವರು ನೀವು ಬಕನಾನೇ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಏನೆಸಕ ಬೇಗ ಬಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಏನೆಸಕ ಬೇಗ ಬಾ ಎಲ್ಲೇ ಬಂದಾಯ್ತೆ ಎಣಿಸಿಕೊಬ್ಬ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬಂದಾಯ್ತೆ ಎಣಿಸಿಕೊಬ್ಬ ಬಲ್ಲವನ ಕರಿಯ ಬಡಿದುರಿಪುವು ಕೊಲಬಲ್ಲವನ ಬಗೆದು ಪಾಡಿಲಿಲೆ. So here Ballavana Kariya, so he is a strong elephant. He is somebody who can kill the strong elephant, which is Kuvalayapida here. Ballavana Kariya badidu ripuva kola ballavana bagedu, he who is capable of destroying all of the enemies. So the Ballavana is split differently, and thereby I have retained the pun here. And just another thing I would like to point out here, when I sang it, I used actually two allied ragas, Darbaru and Nayaki. So where the friends are taking quite a strident tone, saying, "How dare you be still sleeping? And I'll just get up. You're being lazy." And that is in the Darbar Raga, which obviously conveys a Virarasa. But Nayaki has got a very soft touch to it, and it's got a sort of pleading tone to it. And Andal is responding because she's quite sheepish about having been caught sleeping, and therefore she's begging for their indulgence. So I've tried to combine these two ragas when singing it. Yeah, and my verslations aren't generally restricted only to poems. I have done this into film songs as well. So there are quite a few movie songs I have again verslated either into Sanketi or Kannada as a rule generally. So here is one I have done into both, and I'll just sing the Pallavi of the song. This is a very famous, very beautiful song from Sagara Sangamam or Salangayoli. So yeah, Mauna Mela Noyi, that's the original song. Mauna Mana Neram Ilamanadilina Bharam Manadin Asaigal Idaril Maunangal Yenindri Kelungal. That's in Tamil. So when I verslated this, I've tried to use the best of both the Tamil and Telugu version, although they're quite similar. There is some differences in the meaning. So in Sanketi, it goes like this. Mauna mana neru alumana sulodu bharu. Idu mauna mana neru alumana sulodu bharu. Manasinde nilavali kan ulnela. Manasinde nilavali kan ulnela. So that's in Sanketi. In Kannada, it goes this way. Maunave kehele jagamalaguvanta vele. Maunave kehele jagamalaguvanta vele. Yedeyalle nele ಬೆಳದಿಂಗಳ ಸೆಲೆ ತುಳುಕುತ್ತಾ Noorale. So that's those are the two, just for a sample. And this one, I'm sure you will not need any introduction. You will immediately recognize it. So I'll just sing 5 verses or recite 5 verses, I might say here. Jaya Hanumanta Jana Gunavanta Jaya Kapisanta Trijagadamunta Ramaduta Asadala Baladhama Bhima Pavana Sutta Anjana Prema Vimala Veera Vikrama Vajrangi Kumati Nivara Sumatigala Sangi Honnina Maya Vodala Lolugaya Channiga Surulu Gurula Hanumayya Dvaja Vajrada Karadi Pidida Dhira Bhujadi Holeva Hullina Janivara. I'm sure you recognize this is from the Hanuman Chalisa. So again, I have maintained the pattern, but also introduced the Dvitiyakshara Prasa and Yati mostly as well. So that's one. Then this one, this is something very close to my heart. Not so much the verslation, but the original. It's a Jayadeva Ashtapadi, which I have verslated into Kannada. Madana kadana kide odagida veshe. Madana kadana kide odagida veshe. Madana kadana kide odagida veshe. Udurida lara tusu kederida keshearo madhuri puvinda nalivalo kane kadu jane aro madhuri puvinda. The original is Smarasa Marochita Virachita Vesha Galita Kusumadara Vilulita Kesha Kapi Madhuri Purna विलसति युवती प्रत्यधिक गुणापि मधुरे पूर्णा मधुरे पूर्णा. So it's in Kapi Raga because the original has Kapi in it. So, and I'll just quote the second verse from it. Baraselayuta hari balalisidhange sara kosaruta losarida kodakunge. So, hari parirambhana valita vikara kuchakalashopari taralitahara. So that's the original. So, so those are that's something I wanted to share. Lastly, with due apologies to Shankara Bhagavad Pada, I would like to paraphrase the gist of everything, gist of poetry really, by combining two halves of the Nirvana Shatka, which I have verslated in the same meter into English. So it's Name Mrityu Shanka, Name Jati Bheda, Pita Naiva Me Naiva, Mata Na Janmaha. One second. न बंधुर्न मित्रम गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानंदरूपः शिवोहम शिवोहम अहम निर्विकल्पो निराकार रूपो विभुत्वाच सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न चा संगतम नैव मुक्तिर्नमेयः चिदानंदरूपः शिवोहम शिवोहम. So what I would like to say is I would like to show what poetry is about, and that's my thought here. Beyond death, beyond doubt, beyond every difference, never born, I have no mother nor a father. I am not attached nor detached. I am limitless. Poetry, poetry. Yes, I am conscious bliss. So in original, it's Shiva, yes, I am conscious bliss. I think we no doubt will agree that poetry is beyond that. We may die. Hopefully our poems don't die, or certainly don't die as soon as we die. So it's beyond death, beyond doubt. And it, of course, it levels all differences. Surely poetry is not born. It's not created. It's just discovered. It has got no mother nor a father. We may claim ourselves to be the poets or the Rachayitas, but in fact, it's everything is a word of Goddess Saraswati Sharadamba. It's not attached. It's not detached. It is limitless. The limitations are entirely ours. And poetry, yes, indeed, is conscious bliss. So the unconscious bliss is actually patterned into poetry, and we make that conscious. And I think the only job of any poet, whether in original or as a verse later, is to try and capture that bliss and to share that bliss with other people. So I would like to summarize this in Sanketi. So பத்யானுவாது ஒரு வார்த்தை உள்ளிக்கிற பத்தியத்தை இன்னொரு வார்த்தைக்கு ಛಂದೋಬದ್ಧமாக ಅನುವಾದಿಪಿಯರದು. ಇತ್ತ ವರ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ అంటే నా ಸುಮಾರು 4 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕೂಳೆ ಪದತ್ತ ಟಂಕಿಚ್ಚೆ. ಇತ್ತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾக ಮೂಲತೆ ಛಂದಸ್ಸುಳ್ಳೆ ರಚಿಪಿಯರದು. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ಯತಿ ಪ್ರಾಸು ಮುಂತಾನವಿಯ ಇವಿಳ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸರಿಯಾ ವಚ್ಕೊಂಡೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಣ್ಣನ ಮಾಂದೆ. ಇತ್ತ ಪಣ್ಣರ್ಪು ನಂಬ ಉಭಯ ಭಾಷಾ ಮರ್ಯಾದೆಗಳ ಕಾಪಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಡ್ತಿಕೊಂಡು ಮಾಂದೆ. ಅಂತಣ್ಣು ಪಣ್ಣನ ಮನಕ 2 ಭಾಷೆಡೆ ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮಗಳ ಅರಿತಿರನು. ಆನತ್ತಿನ ಮೂಲತುಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕರ ಅಂತ್ಯಲಕ್ಷಣಕ್ಕೂ ಚ್ಯುತಿವರಾದ ಹುಡಿ ಅದು ಅವಿಯಾದ ಹುಡಿ ಪಣ್ಣನು. ಅಂಡಾಕ ಶ್ಲೇಷ ಯಮಕು ಶಬ್ದಾಲಂಕಾರು ಅರ್ಥಾಲಂಕಾರು ಇವಿಳಿಯೆಲ್ಲ ಸರಿಯಾದ ನಂಬ ಮೀತ್ಕೆಣು ಮಾಂದೆ. ಭಾರತೀಯ ಭಾಷೆಗಳೇ ಒಂಡಣ್ಣು ಇನ್ನೊಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಪಣ್ಣರ್ದು ಬಡ್ಡ ಸುಲಭು. ಓಕಂಡಾಕ ವಾಕ್ಯ ರಚನೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಒರೇ ಸಮನಾಯಿಟ್ಟಿರಂದೆ. ಅನಾಕ ಆಂಗ್ಲ ವಾರ್ತೆಗೆ ಪಣ್ಣರದು ಬಡ್ಡ ಕಷ್ಟು. ಅನಾಕ್ಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಮಣ್ಣರ್ಥ ನಾ ಕಾಟಿರಾಣಿ ಅಣ್ಕಂಡ್ರಾಣಿ. ಪದ್ಯ ರಚನೆಯ ಪಣ್ಣರತ್ನಿಯೇ ಶ್ರದ್ಧೆಯನ್ನು ಪದ್ಯಾನುವಾದತೆಯೂ ಪಣ್ಣನು. ಇತ್ತಣ್ಣು ವಾರ್ತಾ ಸತ್ಯ ಕಾವ್ಯಮಯು ತುಸು ಕೃತಕು ಅಂಟು ಅಣಿಪಿಲ. ಅನಾಕ ಅರ್ಥು ಭಾವು ಭಾವನೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕೃತಕಮೋ ಪೊಯ್ಯೋ ಹಾಕಾದು. ಇತ್ತ ನ ಪಣ್ಣೀಕರ ಪಲ ಕೆಲವು ಪದ್ಯಾನುವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ಕಾಟರ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಕೊಂಡ ಪಣ್ಣಿರಾಣಿ. ಇತ್ತ ಕೋಟ ಉಂಗುಳುகளுக்கு பிரயாசமாச்சில்ல அண்டுகன்றாணி. ಚೊವಿಯ ಕೊಟ್ಟದಕ್ಕೆ ಕೋಟಿ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಂಗ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. There should be no loss to the bhava or the bhavane. So the emotions and the meaning should not be lost. There might be a bit of loss to the language use. It may occasionally sound a little flowery, or it may sound a little artificial, but there should never be any loss to the emotion or the beauty of the language itself. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
What a fascinating, multilingual, musical Verslation treat that was. Thank you so much, Dr. Krishnamurthy. Very, very fascinating.